And today on our board, we've got Dave with us. And what's your company called, Dave?
Paverson Games.
Yes. And what is it you're producing at the moment?
Yeah, so I am very excited to say that we are right now working on a game and getting ready to release it called Distilled. It's a spirited strategy game all about crafting spirits in a distillery.
Yeah, so whiskey, everything
Yeah,
like that.
that's right. That's right. Whiskey, gin, vodka, lots of others as well. Whiskey is one of the main spirits, of course, one that many people around the world know, but there's many others as well, which is exciting.
Well, you could tell I said whiskey straight away. It proves I'm a whiskey drinker, doesn't
Yep,
it?
yep.
It's that's the Scottish in me because
That's
me
good.
great grandparents were all Scottish, so there you go. It runs through.
Yep.
So it's very exciting times, isn't it, for board games?
It is. It's unbelievable. It's many people have already said this before. I've heard people say it's this renaissance of resurgence of board games, and I think it's partly my belief is that it's because we are so connected these days to technology and everything we do, screens here, screens there, that for at least me, I love to get away from that and sit around the table with some friends and play a game that challenges my mind in a different way, but also being able to socialize too.
We've said this to many game designers. Well, we've talked about this with many game designers when we've been on your board, how it's the tactile thing of board games, taking you away from like TV screens and interacting with friends, things like that, and family.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And in this case, this honestly was part of why I developed and created Distilled. It's also a chance to have a good drink, have a nice dram while you're playing a game as well, which is important.
You'll have to do a special edition of the game, like, and give a free bottle of whiskey in it.
That's right. Some people have joked that maybe I need to deliver this in a cask, right? So you let it age for a bit, and then you finally crack it open and taste what's inside.
There you go. That's your special edition sorted.
Yeah.
So, but what gave you the inspiration to make this game about this theming?
Yeah. So a little bit going back to Stuart, what you were talking about with your ancestry. So I was very fortunate to, as you can tell by my accent, I am an American, and I was fortunate to be spending some time in Scotland back in autumn of 2019. I was actually conducting research there I'm a professor at a university over here in the States, and I was actually doing research with virtual reality and augmented reality, so something with technology. And I had been touring lots of whiskey distilleries, having some fantastic drams over there of different single malt. And one night I couldn't sleep, and it was a true light bulb moment that came before me, that I realized I could integrate certain game mechanics into a game about making whiskey, about making spirits, that would thematically represent how they do it in the industry as well. And the rest is history. I was up all night working on that, and I've been working on it. Seems like every day, all day since then as well.
Now, you mentioned that you've been a professor at a university. Are you still doing that job as well as doing the board games?
I am. I luckily, of course, in the summers, things lighten up a little bit and we can spend some more time on our own research as a professor. But yes, I work at a university in Wisconsin in the United States. So kind of in the Midwest, just north of Chicago, where I actually teach game design. I'm a professor of game design. So I've got some background in video games mainly, not necessarily always board games. And I've maintained both of those positions and really taken advantage of holidays and other times that I'd be able to spend some time on the game as opposed to at the career at the university.
I mean, we hear this so many times in the board game industry, where it's people are doing it part time, or it might just be a couple of people that start up and they do it full time as a full time job. But it's never much more than a few people in these companies. They are kind of like cottage industries almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. I mean, they of course especially start that way. So Paverson Games is my company, and I am Paverson Games. So there's no one beyond that. Obviously, for Distilled, I'm working with an artist, a good friend of mine, who I've hired on for this project to do all of the art and graphic design. But he doesn't necessarily work for Paverson Games, besides being contracted by them. And with this being the first game I'm taking to Kickstarter, this was something that I knew would be important to develop this structure of a business around what I want to do. But by no means do I have the capital right now to be able to say I'm going to hire employees on. But I think that we see that happen with many companies or many designers who create a game. And of course, Jamie Stegmeyer is a perfect example of this with Stonemaier Games, where originally it was basically him and then another investor, and then before long, adding more and more people to that company because of the volume at which you're not only producing but also designing games as well.
Jamie actually was the first guest we ever had on the show.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually remember that interview. And that was must have been pretty exciting to be able to talk to him about that.
Oh, definitely. And he's a real nice guy as well. Mm-hmm. But how would someone go about, or how did you go about starting this up? What were the logistics of it? What did you do? Just say, well, I'm getting an artist on board, or how did you start?
Yeah, so that good question. So back again in the autumn of 2019 in Scotland, after about a few days of play testing my prototype, where I had lots of just things written on paper, I was playing myself, playing different rounds to try and figure out, is this game fun? Is this game work? Is it broken? Is it challenging? Once I've play tested enough games, designed enough games to know kind of that feeling that I have that there is something there. I called up my friend Eric, who would be the artist, and I asked him if he wanted to do that. And that was a crucial point, because if he had said no, thank you, I'll pass. I would have, quite honestly, Stuart, probably started thinking about taking that to various companies, publishers, as a designer, essentially trying to sell the idea for my game. So I would have continued to play test it, continue to refine it, but then approach other publishers to see if there's interest. But since Eric said yes, that was a defining moment to realize, okay, if he's saying yes, you never, as a designer, want to invest in a large amount of art in your game if you're going to still try and take it to a publisher, because there's a very good chance the publisher is going to just honestly throw that out, put it aside and reskin or redo that or revise it. So once I knew Eric was on board, I knew that this was going to be an independent project. And I had plans for Kickstarter to take it to Kickstarter eventually. So again, this is autumn 2019. And I started gathering more and more people that I would hire for various jobs. So there's a good friend of mine who, his name's Richard Woods. He's actually over in the UK in the Lancashire area. And Richard, I met a little bit ago, and he's helping with the development. So the balancing of the game, so that certain cards might have a certain value to them that for me as the designer, I put values on there, but through play testing, as well as, a good handle on spreadsheets and math, he's been able to balance that out to a very well-oiled machine that feels very balanced now as a game. And people comment on that it's a very tight game, that people oftentimes end within a few points of each other with their scores. So Richard's one, but then there's many others. There's people that have helped with the rules writing, people that have helped with getting it online during the pandemic to play test, people that have helped with different sorts of advertising as well. So this group has grown quite large at this point, of people that I'm asking to be experts in certain areas that I know I cannot be. All the while I'm kind of overseeing this as the creator, designer, owner of the company as we take this on to Kickstarter.
Well, it sounds a fantastic project. Can you tell us a bit about the rules of the game?
Yeah, of course. So essentially in this game, as I think I had mentioned, well, maybe I didn't. You've inherited this. The premise is you've inherited this distillery from some long lost relative. So there's various cards in the game that have these really gorgeous portraits painted, and you're handed two of those at the start, and you decide who you're going to play with throughout the game, because they have variable player powers that are essentially kind of always sit in your distillery. You have a board in front of you that looks almost like a dollhouse view of a distillery that you're looking into, that has the ability to install upgrades like equipment or hire specialists to work in your distillery. You have an area to store ingredients and bottles and barrels, as well as a warehouse to age your spirits. So all that is right in front of you. And then in front of that, kind of in the center of the table, is a market where you can buy different recipes to learn how to make different spirits, as well as ingredients and items and upgrades. So all of that is in front of you. And the object of the game is, over the course of 7 rounds, you're trying to bring this distillery back to its former glory. At the beginning, you don't really know how to make much. You know how to make vodka and moonshine, and that's about it. And over the course of the game, you're trying to learn how to make these more complex spirits that will, of course, result in more points and money, because you're going to make one of those every round, all 7 rounds. So by the end of the game, you'll have made 7 different spirits. And the game has a little bit of mitigate and push your luck, has a little bit of resource management, some resource fulfillment, as well as even a little bit of tableau building. It's definitely a Euro style game. But it also plays 1 to 4 players. It has a really fantastic solo mode, also developed by a UK designer, David Digby, who's known for some of his solo games he's developed. And so kind of overall, essentially what you are trying to do is you're trying to obtain these different ingredients and items from the main market. You're then trying to distill the alcohol with a mechanic that's representative of thematically of how you distill alcohol, where you're mixing cards together and taking the head and the tail, the top and the bottom card off of that stack. So you're kind of pushing your luck to see if you actually fulfilled the recipe. Then you're going to potentially age that in your warehouse to gather flavor as well as prestige. And then finally sell that for money and spirit points or victory points at the end of the game. So all that's kind of wrapped into a round. And you're going to do that over the course of 7 rounds, building up more and more powerful spirits and your distillery itself to eventually, hopefully, become the master distiller, who's the winner of the game with the most spirit points.
Well, I've got a friend that does make his own spirits. He does whiskies, gins, and everything. And he was telling me that everything starts from vodka.
Yep.
Vodka's the first, and when you mention moonshine, I have a joke with him and I say to him, some of this stuff, it's like moonshine. So I won't mention his name on here, Robert. But yeah, so I never knew that it all starts from vodka, but you've obviously got that well covered.
Yeah. So it's you are correct. It one could say that it all starts from vodka, but just because really vodka can be made from a myriad of different sugars. So it could be a barley, it could be a fruit even, or a plant. And of course, the goal of vodka, in all honesty, is to try and be as flavorless as possible oftentimes, because that's kind of the trademark of vodka. While something like a whiskey, for instance, when it comes off the still, it's of course clear. All spirits are clear when they come off the still, because it's just an evaporation of alcohol that then gets liquefied. And what makes whiskey, of course, is not only those ingredients, which in the case of single malt is always just barley, but also where that barley came from. The shape of the still actually affects the flavors, how it brewed in the washback beforehand. And then of course, most importantly, or what people usually focus on the most, because it really does have the ability to affect the flavor the most, is that aging process, where it's absorbing the flavor notes from the wood, the char of the wood. Oftentimes it's a charred wood or reused wood from America. And that's, the longer it sits in there, the more flavor, of course, it's going to obtain. So it's a very fascinating process that I really think of as a romantic process as well. And I really tried as best as I could to capture that feeling in Distilled as well.
I can tell you this now, Dave. You've sold the game to me with your description. So I'm sure you've sold it to plenty of our listeners. Where can they get a copy of this game?
Yeah, great question, Stuart. So it happens to be live on Kickstarter right now. And so this launched on July 6th, Tuesday, July 6th. It's going, depending on when, of course, you're listening to this, it's going to be on through July 29th on Kickstarter. I am thrilled to say that our original goal of raising enough just to print enough copies to make it worth it has been blasted out of the water. We are nearing, as we speak right now, we've neared $150,000 we've raised Now I think in terms of pounds, that's a good lot over 100,000 pounds as well. So again, we're really excited about that. It's proven to be a worldwide success. Many people are very attracted to the idea of this game because it really is the first ever game about distilling spirits that has a heavy strategy focus. There's, of course, speaking of Jamie, there's a fantastic wine game like Viticulture out there. There's fantastic beer games as well, but there's actually no spirits like whiskey games that aren't just maybe trivia or, more focused on the idea of kind of drinking and having fun. This is a little bit more focused on the science and art behind it. So yeah, it's up on Kickstarter, and you'll be able to back for a copy there. We've got a couple different languages represented, including Spanish and Ukrainian, and of course English. And there's actually some more we're hoping to negotiate as we move forward. So we're excited about that, and it's available there for you to back and learn a lot more about it. We've got gameplay videos, reviews. I'm very active, as well as the team. Richard, I mentioned before, is active in the comments section too of the Kickstarter. So some really great ways to learn more about it before you make the decision as to whether that's something for you or not.
Oh, well, it's been great talking to you, Dave. Thanks for coming on Are You Bored?
No problem. Thank you so much for having me, Stuart. I